Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Cloud Security Alliance. My name is Shireen Pirifini. I'm the chair of the Cloud Security Alliance UK chapter. So welcome, you're all very welcome. We're live streaming on YouTube. So just a recap about us. So we are the Cloud Security Alliance UK chapter, and we're here to champion the mission of the Cloud Security Alliance here in the UK. We have a very active UK membership. We engage with a broad set of stakeholders here in the UK, and we're here to champion cloud training, education and awareness in the UK. We survey the needs of the UK members, hence this lightning series of talks that we've had between September and October, Identity in the Cloud. So we're here today to show you the last part 6 of that. So yeah, these are the dates. So from the 12th of September to the 17th of October. So today's the final talk, but it's we actually have a panel of speakers today. So I'll show you who we've got today. Today we'll be discussing future challenges and pitfalls with identity. So the people that we have on our panel today, so we have Sean Turner, who's also co-chair of the CSA UK chapter. He's CISO at TwinStake. We have Shruti, cybersecurity architect at 6.6, and she is also the Cloud Security Alliance Zero Trust Identity Lead. And we have Paul Simmons, who is CEO of the Global Identity Foundation, and he's also a long-term serving board member of the CSA UK chapter, and he's also director of CSA Europe. Okay, so here's the introductions for today. So I'm going to bring the panelists on. Let me move this out of the way. We've got everybody. Yes. Is everybody? Let me unmute everybody. Welcome. Welcome. So, okay, so we've got a series of questions for everyone based on the last 5 talks that we've had. So the first question, if I bring that up so you can all see it. So for the last 40 years, or over 40 years, the basis for access has been based on binary authentication. So based on the fact that you know the username and a matching password. So while we're working to fix that fundamental flaw, at a user level with technologies such as MFA, multi-factor authentication, it's still not fit for purpose, especially when you operate in a cloud or a zero trust environment. So the first question to the panel is, what are the key blockers that you're seeing to move from binary authentication to rich risk-based authentication? We go over to Paul first.
Thanks, Shireen. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so what are the blockers? I suppose for me, the blockers are the industry, the vendors out there are still fixated on binary authentication. It's as simple as that. I mean, if I take, in the days that I had my wife would say a real job and was CISO of AstraZeneca, we used Active Directory like every other large corporate probably does. And what have you got? You've got Active Directory, you log in with your username and password, maybe a little bit of MFA, hopefully these days. And Active Directory then passes it on. In our case, it was to 137,000 other devices inside the organization that says, this definitely is binary 1 Paul Simmons. And it doesn't matter whether my password, I got it right on the 5th attempt. It doesn't take into account where was I geolocated? Was I coming from Russia or China or anywhere else? It just says, passed your password, binary 1 is Paul Simmons. And we do it time and time again. We do it with multi-factor authentication. You've passed multi-factor authentication, absolutely. But guess what? It's a binary 1. It doesn't say how many goes did he have at getting that right. It doesn't give me any other information. We don't have the protocols, if you like, the good protocols in place for actually saying to the entity that is taking the risk, and increasingly that's going to be outside of your organization. So whether it's cloud or zero trust or a third party or doesn't really matter, we don't have the protocols in place for handing all of that to say it's Paul Simmons based on the fact that he passed his authentication using a password, which was a weak password, by the way, on the 5th attempt. He's coming from Russia. He's not using a corporate machine, etc., etc., etc. And we should be passing all that information across to the entity, to actually taking the risk at the end of that transaction to say, now you make your risk-based decision based on all of this. Because at the moment, all they've got to do is base it on AstraZeneca says past authentication is Paul Simmons. And that just isn't fit for purpose.
So in terms of like security jargon, there we're talking ubiquity of this access request. It's passed on to every single thing that you could potentially be logging into. Context of the access request. I'm asking for access to this. This was the application I originally signed into and wanted access to. Escalation. So this was the application I originally signed into. This one has a higher level of integrity, so I need to be asked again. And then like that, like you say, all those factors around indicators of compromise and the context of the geographic context and stuff like that. We've always done time well. We've always done like this request expires after a certain amount of time, but we've never done anything else well, like in terms of like, well, this request was from a coffee shop or what looks like a coffee shop to my identity engine. So this request expires after half an hour. This request was from where the user logs into every single day at 8 a.m. So this request expires at 6 p.m. today.
And also, sorry, go on, Paul.
So I was just going to back that up and say we're doing little bits around the edges, but we're not addressing the elephant in the room. Is I think the problem.
I agree with Paul and Sean. I think first thing is to realize that there is a problem, and once we realize the problem, we can look for solutions. So and also, sometimes with some organizations, the scale is so large. It requires a lot of effort to move from binary trust to something else. And that becomes a very daunting, exercise. And yeah, people tend to say, okay, let's not do it this year. Let's push it off to next year. So I think, they all add on to that particular, to the fact that, yes, binary trust and to continue with binary trust.
So there's a live viewer comment here about TOTP and multi-factor actually being multiple factors. The comment is along the lines of getting the passcode on the device you're doing the transaction on. So yeah, exactly. It's one issue that's developed recently. Password managers will offer to manage your TOTP codes for you on your laptop, and so you could click into LastPass, for example. And use them to generate a code to conveniently log into the thing that you've already just typed your password into in the same browser window. And that is something our policy is written to discourage and to forbid. But it can be a hard thing to enforce from a technical perspective because you don't know context. Again, you don't know where the TOTP code came from. You don't actually know when you issue a TOTP seed what the user's going to you're giving the user that seed, and they could be using anything to generate the token. They could be generating it with a Python script, and you have no and doing it automatically as a convenience or automation exercise, and you have no idea that that's happening.
No, and if you go back to the days when all the big corporates used Secure ID as the gold standard, the problem was it was the gold standard. And therefore, there was a set of assumptions that went in with it that actually, if you were using a Secure ID token rather than a username and password, it was so much more secure. Therefore, if you could hack that, actually, you got way more access than you ever did with username and password.
Because
so there's a sort of flawed
right?
assumption that goes with it.
Yeah, so to actually then implicitly trusting them more because they've logged in with the token, rather than allowing the escalation and the context and the risk assessment, can also be a way of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah,
it's the same with password managers. So you have one master password, and then if someone can hack into that, you got all your passwords for all your admin accounts, and that just flips over.
Don't keep your workstation password in 1Password, and don't keep your SSO password in 1Password. Have memorable passwords that you use for those systems that you don't store in a password manager on the device that you use to access those systems.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Thanks, guys. So that was the first question. And thank you very much for the questions in YouTube as well. Appreciate that. So question number 2. So we all agree organizations are authoritative for the attributes relating to entities that they own or employ. So in the context of that relationship, for example, employment grade, date of joining, or the digital certificate on a corporate laptop. But the problem arises when you need to maintain attributes about an entity for which the organization is not authoritative. So the second question is, how many organizations have you worked in that are able to consume trusted, authoritative attributes from entities that they don't own or manage? And you can talk generally in your experience. You don't have to name specific organizations, but so yeah, open to the floor. Who would like to go with that one?
I'll kick off for you, Shireen. The answer is very few, if any. So I was doing a big conference presentation. And I asked people to put their hands up, and I said, how many of you can assert SAML tokens? And about a third of the audience put their hands up. I said, how many of you can accept SAML tokens from third parties? And there were about 10 people put their hands up. And there, if you like, is the problem. We are not very good at, we want to be other people to be able to use our identities. And remember, it's a binary identity we're giving them. Acme Corporation says binary 1, they are who they say they are. So, therein lies problem number 1. And going back to question 1, but ultimately there is a real issue that I don't see. We're not in that mindset of, actually, I don't want to hold any non-authoritative attributes, because you speak to the IT department, to the identity people, or even HR, and you say, how many of the attributes that aren't actually relating directly to our business are stale? And the answer is, we don't have the first idea. We don't know whether they've moved address. We don't know whether they've whether they've got married, because generally, especially with majority of women anyway, tend to change their name, certainly in Western culture, but not necessarily in other cultures. And all of these attributes, you have to sit down and explain to people, look, okay, name is just a name attribute. It's not an identifier. Don't treat it as authoritative, because if I change it under deed poll, am I going to tell you? Well, I might do, but actually it's generally too inconvenient, so I'll just stick with my maiden name. You see that in a lot of organizations, even though they've changed their name. So yeah, organizations are really, really, really bad. And again, it's one of those culture things we need to get across to people and get people to understand and to architect differently. Please consume authoritative attributes from the authoritative source.
On that point, on the names thing, for internationalization and culture normalization, the amount of fun we've had at a higher education institution with first name, surname, middle name, or names, and preferred name, and the interesting things that some people from different cultures put in those boxes that don't represent what we in the West, in the UK, or in Europe would call their first name, surname, middle name, and all names, and preferred name. So we've had surnames put in preferred name boxes, and all sorts of interesting takes on interpretation of in a culture that doesn't have those norms, what to put in those boxes where all of them have been set as required.
Yeah, and it's the same on different cultures like China. So I had a guy called Ben Tan who used to work directly for me and manage security out in Asia Pac. And when he was coming over to the UK and we needed to sort visas and other bits and pieces, I said to my PA, I said, just ask Ben what his real name is as it is on his passport, because it wasn't Ben Tan. I knew that, but I had to explain to my PA when she was arranging visas that actually chances of it being the same name that was on his passport was almost non-existent.
Yeah.
I would also like to add a bit of a color to this. So, usually organizations do access control reviews and to make sure that, and whoever, whether it's a third-party supplier or whether it is an internal, or, from an internal perspective, they look for the names and validate the existence of the person in the organization. But the attributes are rarely validated. So I think that's where the problem also lies. The attributes also should be recertified.
I'm going to answer the question with a number, which is 1, and it was a university. It was Warwick, but it's in common with with a lot of other higher education institutions. The only place I've seen it done properly is EduRoam, which is a Wi-Fi hotspot service for roaming across universities, and you can log in Cambridge with your Warwick username and password, and it works. And that identity is authoritative to Warwick. If Warwick disable that identity or change stuff about that identity, it will stop working at the other institutions. And that was achieved using Radius, not using SAML, because of the vagaries of the Wi-Fi ecosystem. And it worked absolutely fantastically well, but required an enormous amount of effort on each institution's part to make it work. Work reliably.
Actually, EduRoam is even better than that, because a lot of universities, when personal emails became ubiquitous, actually said, why are we giving them university email addresses? Let them actually register with their own email address, the Gmail address or Hotmail or whatever. And then actually you could do the same trick. You could go over to Cambridge University and log in on EduRoam using that same Gmail address as the root identifier. So
as long as your parent host institutions still
correct.
recognize you as a user.
Yes. Yeah, very neat.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you ever so much. So let's move on to question 3. So let me just double check that. Okay, so question 3. So we all know zero trust as a concept is on the rise, but most successful implementations are reliant on a single source of identity truth, which the organization has to manage. So question number 3 is, what aspects of zero trust, particularly around authorization, needs to change or improve to deliver the security nirvana that zero trust promises? So we'll go to Shruti on that one, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So zero trust is about changing the mindset, the way we work, which Paul and Sean very kindly touched upon in the earlier questions. So especially around authorization or around identity, what's required is discovery exercise to understand where exactly the identities are being consumed in the organization. For example, it's a very easy thing for, say, I'm not saying an HR department would do it, but anybody else can do it. Go and purchase a software as a service application and then stick identities in there. So, and if it is not integrated with your central identity provider, or if someone doesn't know about it, then the levers continue being on the system even after they have left the organization. So I think if anything, we need to change in today's world, and also to align ourselves to zero trust. I think we should first start on a discovery journey, and the organization should know where exactly the identities have been created and where they are being consumed and how they are being used, and what's the general process around that. And I think the reason for this is also that any kind of a compromise usually starts with identity or access that is wrongly configured or is maliciously obtained. So your identity is the source of a lot of things that can go wrong.
So you're saying that life cycle management, provisioning and deprovisioning, and concepts around that are one of the biggest challenges still.
Yes, it's provisioning, deprovisioning, proofing the identity, making sure that the access is recertified, re-verified, and also consuming signals to make sure that the identity that is accessing a particular resource is indeed the one that's being authorized. So I think it's not just making sure that the right identity has the right access at the right time. It's also making sure of that, and it is supported by various processes along with technology.
So I had I won't mention the company, but I had a very interesting discussion with the CTO of a well-known organization that branded themselves as a zero trust identity provider. And it went along the lines of, you install our app on all your devices and we will manage the signals and the intelligence and everything else. So, so immediately I'm going, yeah, binary one. But anyway, we let them finish. And I said, okay, let me pose you a problem. So I've got 30 very highly paid consultants coming in to administer our SAP system on Monday morning. And I need to give them access. And what I don't want to do is configure 30 laptops over the weekend so they can have access, because that's brain dead. And anyway, they're coming in with their own laptops, with their own tools and everything else. And we're paying lots of money for them. And so the answer was, well, just install our software on their laptops. And I'm going, yeah, but they're what the big four. Their security people give them lockdown laptops. They're not allowed to install your product or our recommended product on their laptops. So what are we going to do? Oh, just install our product on their laptops. And we went round in this circle for about 5 minutes until I said, fine, forget it. You don't get it, do you? They were so fixated on, my product will fix all your problems and everyone else's.
That's partially a supply chain problem, though, right? Because if you had a contract with the consultants to say they had to do certain things to gain access, that's a solution, isn't it? Perhaps not the right solution. I think the right solution is more flexible device-bound access controls, where device-bound access controls for your employees are stronger, but device-bound access controls, there are alternatives to them for when you have people that don't conform to the norms, as it were.
Yeah, but but ultimately in a zero trust world, it shouldn't matter whether they're bringing in, let's say for sake of argument, an Ernst & Young machine, corporately managed, or it's a bring your own device from a independent consultant, or whoever in between. The security nirvana, if you like, the zero trust promises is to say, actually, we will accept requests to connect to these systems from anything, and we will make a risk-based decision. So the risk-based decision will be different if it's an Ernst & Young employee on an Ernst & Young corporately managed device. Yeah,
they'll have to re-authenticate more often, and they'll have to provide additional factors to authenticate their identity, because they can't authenticate their device.
Yeah, but the trouble is 80% of the products out there that I see and speak to people about is, no, if you implement our product everywhere, we'll make it all work for you. But actually, those products don't have the flexibility to accept other authentication from other organizations or other devices from other organizations, because it hasn't got their software or their signals.
An alternative. You need device identification is a factor, but there should be other factors you can substitute for it.
Yes, absolutely. Because, after all, we are only, when we look at the risk-based access management, we are looking to step up or step down the signals and consume stronger signals if they don't match a particular context that we are looking to identify, and then grant access to the requester. So yes, I mean, irrespective of what the device is, the environment, the setup, or the zero trust environment should be able to consume signals from other sources as well. But it depends, of course, what the context is and how the sources are, the signals are sourced for that particular context. But that should be one of the use case and factored in.
In the true nirvana, in the true, like, the ideal end state here, you'd reach out to Ernst & Young's IDP and say, "Who's this?"
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That would be theory.
Brilliant. I think, yeah, let's move on to the next question. I think you wrapped that up nicely, Sean, there. So question number 4, if I take this one off. So increasingly we're seeing the zero trust phrase being included on vendor products, from identity products to network products and everything else in between. So do you personally think that zero trust, I think I know the answer to this, do you think zero trust can be packaged or purchased as a product?
No. Short answer, no. It's a way of working. It's a mindset. It's a framework. So we just can't package zero trust and then say, "Hey, here is your tool. Go and implement it." Because no, the frameworks need to be implemented. It is a journey, so one should actually approach the whole thing with that mindset.
I think you're asking the question to the wrong set of people, to be honest, Shireen. I think the problem is we all work as full-time security professionals, and the problem is, for a lot of organizations out there, they look at what's going on, especially American organizations, because you've got a federal edict from the White House that says thou must do zero trust to all federal organizations. So you've got CEOs out there of tiny little companies who are going to their IT department and going, "Why aren't we doing zero trust? Because the White House is mandating it as the security nirvana." And they go to their person, guy or gal out there who has security as a part-time job of running an entire IT department, who then goes to their vendor saying, "I need some zero trust," just as the way they used to go and say, "I need a firewall," or "I need some anti-malware," and they're going, "I need some zero trust." And the problem is, the vendor's reaction to that is they are packaging their product, whatever it is, with added zero trust, because they want to sell into that market. And I think, if you want to know why people are confused about what zero trust is because what professionals like us and the CSA and other luminary bodies out there are telling you, which is, it's a journey, it's an architecture, it's a frame of mind, is diametrically opposed to what they're hearing from the value-added resellers and the vendors and everything else. And in the middle, all these poor little people who are doing security as part-time are caught in the middle.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate and say, why not? But with certain caveats. And I think the caveats for me are, provided it includes enough of a consultative aspect to get the packaging and product right, which might involve, it might involve the vendor knowing quite a lot about your organization by the end of the proposal. And the other caveat is, if it's really what you need to get it across the line with your accounting team. And if you can package anything as a product if it's convenient for financial purposes, but don't confuse that with doing it properly.
Yeah, I mean, but my issue is that when I speak to people, and especially those who have to deal with the VARs, my constant debate with a couple of the VAR salesmen, particularly security salesmen, is, what does V stand for? Well, it's value. So what value are you actually adding for your 40% that you're taking off the top? Because actually all they're doing is selling them the product.
Yeah, that is a problem.
No matter what it is, actually, but particularly when it comes to security.
An industry-wide problem that doesn't restrict itself to security or indeed identity.
Maybe yes. Maybe it's a bigger issue.
Or information technology. It's not restricted to any of those domains.
I think parts of zero trust can actually be a technology solution. Like, when you do the identity pillar, you can have a single source of truth of identity as an identity database, or when you do the data, you can look at how to ensure that data is properly segmented in, using microsegmentation. So you can use products to deliver the zero trust framework, but I don't think you can package the zero trust as a product and then sell it out there. They are two different things. This is what I would like to say.
You can't package it and sell it generically. You'd have
there
to
you go.
and sell it on a customized, bespoke basis, like say for basically for convenience or because that's how you want to consume that organization's services.
Yeah, I'm going to pop in a blatant plug for the CSA here and say one of the advantages of the CSA. First of all, it is vendor independent, and secondly, one of the things I think we do really well is arm Joe Public with the nasty questions to go and ask those vendors.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Well, thanks everyone for that one. So to finish up, really good advice. Our last question, finally, there are many aspects of the whole identity management landscape that probably need to change. However, as a final thought, what is the one thing that you would like to do or fix that you can't do today to enable a more secure future?
I would say think differently. I mean, obviously, whatever we have been doing so far hasn't worked. I mean, it has worked in parts. It has also not worked in parts. So think differently to address what you think hasn't worked so well. I would say that, and zero trust brings in that kind of a different thinking element.
I'm tempted to cop out and say watch the last half an hour and there's your answer to the question. But I think like you say, the intention being to summarize and then to give some of my own bent on it. I think I'm more concerned at the moment about the state of the device identity landscape and the integration of device identity with other authentication factors in a meaningful and flexible way, as pointed out by Paul and Shruti and everyone really. I think I would like it if my team's devices, I had a level of assurance over them and where they're located and stuff that's integrated properly with my identity management, my IDP. But then I'm reflecting on what Paul said with other IDPs and other concepts of things that they could log in with and whether we call it logging in and all of those kind of issues around session establishment and continuation and escalation. Maybe I've blurred it and there's more than one theme there, but I think something that came up when we discussed, something that struck me when we discussed question 3 or 4, I'm not sure which one it was that when Paul was talking about his outside contractor, I thought it would be ever so nice if not only could we associate these contractors with the organisation that hosts them as IDP, but if they're an independent contractor, if we could consume some authoritative identity document at the point that they first log in. So the idea that our systems would understand fundamentally the concepts of things like passports and driving licenses and national insurance numbers and stuff, and that we could get them to prove that not only that they have the credentials we issued them, but that they are actually that person on that one-time basis, then we could trust their device that they've happened to log in from and their person and their login credentials that much more from that point onwards. in this remote first world where we probably never met these people face to face, which comes into like how we do identity reset processes as well, and the concept of like, okay, identity resets in a remote business should be performed over a video call, and you should have an identity document to hand. Otherwise, like, I have absolutely no idea whose password I'm actually resetting here.
Yeah. So for me, I suppose, and it takes us back to question one, which is, you know, we started doing in the days of mainframes user identity. If you were lucky enough, you person got access to the mainframe. What are we going to change? What I would like to change is move away from a fixation on people. It's the one thing, and I've said this in the previous stuff, and it's the one thing that NIST has got totally wrong, in my opinion, is it is not about, they define people entities and non-people entities, and stop fixating on people while you try to design a system for people, and then everyone else as an add-on, an afterthought. You are doomed to fail. You have to treat all entities equal, and you have to actually be able to consume those that identification from their authoritative source, such that you can understand context. And if you understand context, you can do risk-based, and you can do zero trust, and you can do cloud so much more easily. If you don't understand why, go back to 1, 2, and 3 of this series, where hopefully I explain it a little better.
Treat identities equal unless they're an IDP.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other things, you know, anonymity at the root of an identity is critical, otherwise you can't make it scale. But that's a different set of discussions altogether.
Brilliant. Are there any final thoughts from anyone? Or are we happy to move on?
There are a couple. There's another comment in there was some follow-ups. PRBH, whoever that is, said about mobile phones, but I think we've been there and done that. The convenience factor of the iPhone, helpfully reading the message and populating it, and I think convenience factors shouldn't be overlooked. They shouldn't necessarily be dismissed out of hand. I think convenience factors are useful, and but there maybe isn't a problem with the iPhone taking the code from the SMS and plugging it into your banking app. The problem is that the fact it's delivered over an SMS in the first place might be the thing that we need to address.
Yeah.
And then any thoughts of zero trust package of AI, which is potentially one that we could all digress on for a minute or two. But yeah, context is king, and if your AI additional flavor and context, then yeah, that's what it's there for. That's the utility of AI in this context.
The problem is, and just to comment on the mobile phone thing, is it is actually binary authentication. So if you actually delve into the programming of these apps that you get on your phone, the API from the fingerprint or the face recognition says authentication passed, binary 1. It doesn't pass to the application. How well was it? What level of sensitivity it was? What device were you actually using, so that I can make a decision about actually this face recognition is really good versus this is really weak, depending on the model you're using. All of that information just is not passed to the application. So the banking app particularly is faced with the decision of trusting that the API, Android or iPhone, says authentication passed. And again, it's that binary flaw that creeps in everywhere. Trust us.
The banks have started putting in their terms and conditions that you shouldn't have biometric authentication turned on if someone else uses your device.
Yep.
They put it on the biometric sign-up page for your online banking.
And everyone ignores it. It's a cover. The trouble is, it's a cover your ass. Pardon my French.
Policy versus enforcement.
It's policy versus enforcement, because for years we've been going around saying, look, I can enroll my fingerprint on my wife's phone, and I can log into my banking app, and my banking app says, yep, you are Elizabeth Simmons, because it's authentication passed. Thankfully, we have a joint account, so it is not hacking. But The reality is that, you know, as someone explained to me, the test of whether a 15-year-old girl is actually your bestie is, do you let them enroll their fingerprint on your phone? That, I'm told, is the acid test. Probably I'm a bit too old to worry too much about 15-year-old girls, but you get the problem out there. So yeah, it is a real issue. Just to finish up with the comments we've had, any thought of ZD packaged with AI? The answer is absolutely brilliant. I think AI has got a lot to offer. The problem is getting AI the contextual signals it needs to deal with, which goes back to what we were previously saying. There are too many binaries in the system. If you want AI to work properly and make really good decisions, you need to give it contextual, risk-based signals to work with. Otherwise, garbage in equals garbage out.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Right. Okay. So that brings us, I think, to the end, and we're just slightly, I said, between 1 and 1/4 past. So we're doing okay. So just to finish off then, so these were your panelists today. So Sean, Shruti, and Paul, thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts on a very interesting topic. Just as a recap, just a reminder, if you have missed any of this series or you want to watch it again, now you've seen the end, it's good to go back to the start. So you can go through all of these and watch all of these talks on our website. They're also on our YouTube channel. And the link, I've posted it into YouTube, but the link is up from our website. You'll see lightning talks, and it's the identity series. And yeah, these are all the different parts. So we talk about understanding identity. So Paul goes through understanding identity, what is identity, context and trust, the challenges with identity, and then Sean extending identity into the cloud, Shruti leveraging identity for zero trust, and it's finished up with today. So watch out for more. I think we'll do a recap of the whole series in a maybe a white paper or a blog post. So that will be coming up soon for you to consume. Yeah, let us know what you think, and if you want to get involved in anything that we're doing, if you want to do talks for us, we're all volunteers, we all have full-time jobs, all working in security. But yeah, feel free to reach out, get involved. Yeah, thank you for your attention, and thanks again to all the panelists. Huge thank you to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, I should say. Yeah, I think that's it. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Corinne.
you.